Bang ding ding, trademark. He come out 6'7" tall. Bang ding ding, one is star. Bang dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding dong ding. It is a perfect day.
Woke up to the sound of the garbage truck again. Upstairs neighbor's toilet's leaking on my head. Cars broke down, I missed the bus, there runs a 10. I had a feeling this was a day to stay in bed. I finally left my pad right under Jumbo's cloud roof. A police officer pulled out his gun and said, I said, sir, you got the wrong guy. I guess it's just the perfect day. It's just the perfect day. Na, 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 na.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Eggs. I'm Ryan. He's Mike. Together today, it's just the two of us. We had a guest cancellation this morning, and we figured we ought to take advantage of this time for reasons I think we've discussed a little bit prior to this show, but I'm not entirely sure. So we're going to get everybody caught up on what's going on with Mike, what's going on this fall as far as it pertains to the show, and everything else. So I guess without any further ado, welcome to the show, us.
Yeah. I guess, since we both got up and got dressed, and I mean, like, I put a hoodie on, so there's that.
Yeah, I mean, I know you got all called up. It was special for me.
I know. We might as well do a show, right?
Exactly. Well, and there's actually a good reason for it. So, I mean, obviously, we do a lot of interviews on this show, and we have several more, already booked, weeks and months ahead. Obviously, there's more great programming to come, and so that's all good news. But we do have a little bit of a change in program schedule coming on our end. Obviously, this is a technical pull back the curtain kind of moment. But for people who've been following the show for any amount of time, especially for, maybe the last year or two, you know that Mike has got a affinity for web development and things like that. Also, we spend a lot of time talking on the show about career pivots and making big moves, right? And I don't think there's any time like now, especially post-COVID and sort of post-COVID and whatever we're calling this time,
yeah,
and everything else that people are thinking more and more about big changes and making changing the way that they live and the way that they work and all that stuff. And our boy Mike here is no different. And I want to talk a little bit about it.
First off, you just called me our boy Mike, and that takes me back to the days of.
Oh, that's what they called you on the radio, right?
That's what they called me on the morning show
funny.
Back in the day. So that just kind of made me chuckle a little bit.
I meant our, like mine and our like our collective hour.
Yeah, that's hilarious. So yeah, like you said, I've always kind of dabbled with web development. And if you've listened since the beginning, I was working on a big project when we first started where I'd spend hours just trying to teach myself how to code and how to, do JavaScript and Bootstrap and all the fun stuff. And when we made the studio in Salt Lake, I kind of put that thought process on back burner. Like I was like, well, we're doing a studio, so I'm not going to worry too much about web development, and kind of shut that section of my brain off. And after COVID hit and everything kind of, went down that road, the studio kind of got shut down because of that. So we moved out. And then the last year and a half, we've been doing, Ryan's remote, I'm remote, and we're just doing our own kind of thing. And so the studio is not really a consideration anymore. Because of that, you also know I went down, I'm going to do landscaping kind of thing. And after a summer of doing landscaping, I pretty much decided that my back is too old to do that. And I like to be able to walk. And so I would rather not kill myself doing other people's landscaping. So I don't think I'm going to do that again. I don't think I'm going to even keep my contractor's license just because the cost of the insurance and everything to be a contractor. I bet you almost all the profits I made working this summer went to paying insurance. So I'm not going to keep that up. But for those of you who listened a few weeks ago, we interviewed a guy named Zach Wilsant, and he's a radio exec from iHeartMedia that ended up not liking radio anymore and switched to doing full stack development. And he went through a program called General Assembly out of LA. And essentially it's a 12-week boot camp where you're, 9 to 5 every day, Monday through Friday, working with, a teacher and a full class of students. And they're essentially teaching you everything you need to know to be a full stack developer. And I start on Monday. So yeah, I signed up, and it's not cheap. It's like 15 grand. But I like their program. I like what they offer. They have a program where essentially if you don't get a job that pays over 40,000 a year in tech, essentially your tuition is free. So it kind of helps with the instead of coming out of pocket 15 grand, it's essentially a student loan that if you don't get hired and don't get a job, you don't have to pay back, which is kind of comforting to me, because I would much rather be making 65, 70,000 a year paying back student loans than working at Burger King paying back the same amount. So kind of benefit.
Well, no, and I think that this is a really awesome thing. And we wanted to talk about it for a couple of reasons. First, to sort of put a bow on what we started with was, there's going to be some changes coming up. Obviously, you've got 12 weeks of really arduous education ahead of you. You're going to be working basically full-time hours in school.
Well, and, plus homework. So, 9 to 5 plus 2 or 3 hours of homework every night.
Yeah. So Mike is going to basically be, not around for the next little bit. And, and we always make do, there's things like, when Mike was off in Nome, or when I was off in New York or in Spain or wherever, like, the show is very adaptable, very pliable. So we're capable of doing the show from whenever, wherever. But the reason we're doing the show today and taking advantage of this extra time, despite a cancellation, was, basically from a podcasting standpoint, we need to have stuff in the hopper, right? We need to have shows put together. And so, in order to maintain our cadence of dropping every Thursday. So we decided we should do this show mostly to kind of catch people up, but also to let people know that, sometime in the next 12 weeks, there may be an occasional greatest hits or best of or whatever. Maybe not. Maybe we'll get through it. I don't know. We're gonna work a little bit with Mike's schedule once he's in school and see what's going on, and we'll play around with it a little bit. But if you see anything weird, that's probably why. So just engage with us on social media. Let us know what's going on. If you have questions or whatever, shout, and we'll let you know. But basically, that's kind of what's happening, or where we're going, at least for the next 12 weeks. So we'll see what's doing there.
Yeah. So if you see a few repeats, or like you said, best of shows, it's 100% due to my schedule. It's just going to be crazy. So thank you for bearing with us and letting me do this.
Yeah. Well, and the other point I want to make about this whole thing, and I think it's really cool, actually, a couple of points, I guess. First of all, you and I, Mike, and for people who know us outside of the show and have known us for the last 20 years that we've been running around together, Mike and I are notorious for coming up with great ideas and then like sort of firing and starting new businesses or whatever, right? So we've had concert production companies, we've had, clothing brands, we've had everything under the sun, right? And we've always had sort of this entrepreneurial mindset, right? We're always chasing after something. And so Mike and I, a topic that comes up a lot, and, more so probably with me in the past couple years, but now with Mike, is this idea of sort of a career pivot a little bit later in life, right? Mike's younger than I am, but, still, we're talking, here we are, we're, getting to sort of, I guess, what you would consider sort of a midlife. We're still young for midlife, but we're definitely past career one. Yeah. Right. And so here we are, we're making changes, and we've had a lot of conversations about what might we do? Your landscaping business was one of those things, hey, maybe I'll get into landscaping. I really enjoyed doing the rock wall. So I'm going to, try and turn that into a business. your back disagreed with you, but it wasn't trying. And,
and like technically, I mean, if I would have approached it as strictly business where, okay, I'm going to hire people and I'm going to find work and my job is to find work and their job is to do the work. Technically, I probably could have continued with it, but no.
But either way, even if you had some support or whatever, it's really hard work. I mean, it's arduous work. Yeah. Whether you're just looking for work or you're out bidding jobs or whatever. I mean, it's a big project. So, I mean, but the point I'm trying to make anyway is that, you were willing to sort of take a run at change and trying something different, because of basically COVID. COVID has jacked up the DJ realm. It's pretty tough to be a club DJ when clubs are barely opening now.
Yeah.
And, and I know that you're still working in a couple clubs and you're still doing, a fair amount of DJ work, weddings and things like that. But but it's difficult, when the world shuts down around you. Yeah. And so I kind of want to, I guess, take a minute and sort of recognize and applaud your ability to sort of pivot and start to make that change. Because, obviously it's something that I've maybe not been totally brave enough to pull the trigger on over these years. And so, so I love to see you doing it, because if you can do it, then maybe I'll follow along.
Well, I mean, like in all reality, like the landscaping gig paid my bills over the summer. Without it, my car would have been repoed and, I wouldn't have been able to pay rent and all the fun stuff. And so technically by me starting that business, I covered my ass and did what I needed to do. And, the fact that I'm not continuing on with it is just, COVID's kind of letting up. My DJing income's starting to come back. So, that's good. But even with a steady DJ income, that's not, yeah, you can do good at it and you can have a good stable income, second income, but it really shouldn't be your first income because.
Oh yeah. Unless you're, a Vegas DJ or something and you've got a residency or you're one of these global guys that you hear about
or even a guy like Jeff Jones in Phoenix.
Yeah. Right.
But he does 300 gigs a year. I do maybe 30, and the difference is I focus on higher dollar clients and, small nightclubs just for Friday, Saturday nights during the winter when weddings don't happen. And so
I think that's the thing, right? Is, entertainment, you and I have been around enough musicians and stuff to know that, the entertainment business is a challenge.
Yeah.
And so, it's no different for your DJs.
Yeah. And so, I'm really excited to start this boot camp. For me, it's kind of like being able to have this certificate saying that I've accomplished everything and that I can go and take to an employee and say, hey, here's my GitHub, here's all the projects I've done, here's, my previous work history here, and be able to say, hey, this is why you should hire me, and be able to, go through this 12-week program and actually get the knowledge and understanding that I need to get a job in this industry. I'm excited about it because A, I can still DJ, and B, I'm going to start getting benefits and a solid, livable wage that I'm not going to be sweating week to week, wondering, am I going to have enough money to do this or that, or, it'd just be nice to get, stability.
That benefits discussion is especially interesting, and maybe this is for our older audience. I think that this idea of career pivoting and all the stuff really appeals to maybe older people, in their 30s, 40s, because I think that, and honestly, this is maybe one of the coolest things about this podcast is that we're going to be able to sort of, I guess, live vicariously through you and see how this works. And it sounds funny, but the idea is that, if you're a 30 something and you're having doubts about your career, right? Because I think for most people, the model is you go to high school, you go to college, you come out of college, you get a job and you work that job till you die and then you're done, and I know with younger generations, more like, millennial types or whatever, the rap is that they only work 2 or 3 years at each place and move on. And maybe that is sort of the way of the future. But I think for people that are sort of already our age or our generation of people and older, the idea of changing a career or moving or doing something totally new, changing industries altogether, I think is really scary for people. And so I think that the opportunity to sort of watch you go through this and not just watch you, but see sort of how it works. Okay. So you applied for the program, you went through all this stuff, this is what the course works like. all those kinds of things, I think will sort of take the edge off people who might be looking for a change and aren't sure what to do. Yeah. Especially right now during, sort of this post-COVID era or whatever, where people are making a ton of changes. Lots of people are falling out of the job market or falling out of their prior positions and moving to do something new. A lot of people are going into remote positions. A lot of them could be becoming web developers, kind of like what you're going to do. So I think that there's a lot of opportunity, but I think your specific track is going to be really interesting for people to follow.
Yeah. I had considered, using my CDL and just doing long haul trucking for, the biggest problem with, doing trucking is like, I'd have to quit my job every 8 months because, after winter wedding season starts and I'm already contracted out for the summer and I can't do, 10 weeks of weddings while I'm driving to Florida, it just doesn't work. And so, that's why I was kind of like, I don't want to necessarily go down the truck driving route. Also, I've read articles that in 10 years, truck driving isn't going to be around. You think of the automated trucks that they're coming out with, that's for one reason, that's to replace the human element, the driver portion of it. So if they're coming out with that tech and it's going to be a thing in 10, 15 years, if I go and just start driving truck as a career, A, that's not going to be around. And B, what happens in 10 years when I'm 50, pushing 50, that's 10 years in a web dev field that I could have, started working on a retirement.
Easily making well into six figures by then.
Yeah.
And it makes sense. Well, and I think, the other aspect of it too, is that, that's not easy work either. I happen to know from working with you all these years that you're an incredibly hardworking guy. And you'll kill yourself for the show and to make sure that everything goes perfect. And, I still have flashbacks of hanging truss over Middle Avenue in Arizona, trying to build a nightclub outside, in the middle of the night and then tear it down at like 3 a.m.
the next day. Yeah.
And So, I can still just see you up there hanging upside down from something, trying to string a light, And, you've always had that work hard mentality and, it also went into this landscaping thing, right? You were going to do landscaping because you work hard. You're not a stranger to working hard like that. But I think you're right to be looking forward at what's 55 look like, 65, 75 years old look like. Eventually your body's going to say, hey man, fuck this. I'm done.
Well, I'm pushing 40 right now. And really, if I'm looking for some sort of retirement, some sort of benefits, 401k, whatever, I got to jump on it. I got to, I've sat around and twiddled my thumbs as a DJ for the last 20 years. And, it's been fun. Yeah. I've had experiences that most people wouldn't. But because of the nature of the beast, all my money's gone into buying this cool mixer and speakers behind me. And, it's like any type of savings goes right back into the next piece of equipment. And so,
I think that sort of like the common person with the common job doesn't recognize about entrepreneurs is that most people, maybe you achieve a scale or maybe you happen to be really disciplined, but most of us don't have a 401k or most of us don't get benefits.
Yeah.
I happen to get them through my wife, but if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have them. I don't have a 401k. I've just really started saving this year.
Yeah.
It's like, but I think that those are things that are taken for granted when you just have a day job. You don't realize that most people working sort of in the gig economy don't have that stuff.
Well, and the stable income too. If you're making $4,000 a month, and your expenses are 25, that's 1,500 extra that you can, put into savings or invest or use for other things. Whereas me, I might make $4,000 a month, but my expenses, I got to travel to Washington to, do this. There's $600 in gas. There's, I got to buy a new laptop. There's this, there's that. There's always one more thing you got to do as an entrepreneur that takes your money. And just yesterday, just getting set up for this class, I spent $600 in new monitors and a docking station. And
do you have one of those cool vertical monitors now?
Yeah. I got some nice monitors.
You're all the way in.
Well, because it makes sense. The vertical monitor, you're coding, you have long lines of code, and it makes it where you can see everything you're working on. And
that's
I also
the the MacBook Pro. I'm looking at a laptop.
I saw those yesterday and I'm like, man, I got to put mine for sale. Because they did everything on that, like, I got a fairly new MacBook Pro, but it has the touch bar. It doesn't have the HDMI outs. It doesn't. I love how they're reverting back to what it was.
Well, it's funny. I was reading an article yesterday because I had forgotten that Apple had their big release event, right? And usually, I mean, at least in the past, I used to watch them, but I guess respect to Tim Cook, but like they haven't innovated anything in forever.
No.
I mean, they've made cooler and sharper and slicker everything. But everything's kind of the new thing. I mean, perfect example is that new iPhone, right? I mean,
it's got a little notch out of it. That's it.
I don't even know if they did the notch, to be honest with you. All I know that's different is the cameras. Again, I mean, this is like the third or fourth camera in a row that it's just been a camera upgrade.
Well, there's only so much they can do. I mean, they've already kind of pushed the envelope as much.
See, I like the problem. And maybe I give like Steve Jobs too much credit or whatever, but like there was a time when these were the types of things being invented.
Yeah.
Right? Like these were the things that were being innovated coming out of, now they're very commonplace, touchscreen phone and all that stuff. But when iPhone 1 rolled out, that was a big deal.
Yeah.
Or when the iPod rolled out, that was a big deal. And I have to imagine, I mean, I certainly couldn't come up with it, but I have to imagine that there's such a thing as new ideas out there. Right.
Yeah.
And now they have figured out how to totally maximize and be crazy efficient and, make smaller and build better. And I mean, they've done a lot of innovative things on that front. Right. But they don't create anything new in the sense of some new breakthrough technology very often anymore.
Yeah. I think the only thing that they've done recently is the M1 chip, and that's kind of cool.
Technology revolution. Right. But I mean, same thing. I still have my iPhone with a better camera.
Yeah.
So, I mean, the chip is better. And so for tech nerds, obviously it's a step up. And, but back to your point that they're reverting back to all the old ways at least on the Pro models. I don't know if they're going to do the same on the others, but on the MacBook Pros in recent years, like in the generation you have, the one I have is sort of that generation 2 with the touch bar and all that stuff. Like the thing that killed me more than anything is they got rid of the hard escape key.
Yeah.
And so
I bump it all the time. And I'll be DJing. I'm trying to find a song. Right. And I have huge hands. Like I'm trying to type and my hand will rest and bump that escape key, and they'll try and exit me out of the software when I'm trying to find a song and have hardly any time left to load it in and mix it in. And so it's like, that's a huge fail on my end. And then the strictly
and then
dongles.
they streamlined. Yeah. That's the thing, right? So they streamlined all the way down to just USB-Cs. So like the model I have has 4 USB-Cs on it.
Yep. Right.
Like you're saying, I mean, everything has a dongle, right? You have to have a dongle for every living thing. Like, I mean, even the headphone.
That literally happened to me this weekend. I had a gig. I showed up to the gig and I had forgotten the dongle on my USB at home. And so I literally had to turn around, drive all the way home, grab the dongle, go all the way back, put me to where instead of having a half hour to mess around and kind of just get, hey, I'm ready to work, ready to go, just kind of plan the first 2 or 3 songs. I had to get back, start music without any, thought or whatever. And it just kind of put me in I'm flustered. Now I'm going to ruin the rest of my night because of a dongle. And And like, for example, I have one dongle that has like HDMI and all that kind of that stuff, built into one dongle. So basically you don't have to have 12 dongles. You can have one. Uh-huh.
Well, now because of the way it sits on my desk, it actually hangs over the edge. So it puts a little weight on that USB-C thing. And so now it's starting to short out. And so, if that dongle fails, I lose everything, right?
Yep.
Like, I mean, I don't have enough ports otherwise. And so anyway, so with this new MacBook Pro, they've reverted back to all hard keys. They've reverted back. There's an HDMI jack right in the side again.
It's a MagSafe power.
I think there's even a headphone jack again.
Yeah. Well, and you know what? I have to give credit where credit's due. Props to Apple for actually realizing that they messed up by taking all that away. And, they're selling it as a feature by putting it back. It used to be there, but at least now it's like, they're not acknowledging that they messed up. They're trying to sell it as, hey, we added an HDMI thing to it, when really it was there before and they just took it away. Yeah. So it's
funny because I mean, those are supposed to be pro models. They're for people who work in the, film, music, video, design industries, whatever. I mean, and those ports are critical.
Yeah.
I mean, just that HDMI jack, just to not have to go through this dongle to run my extra monitors will be a lifesaver.
Yeah. I mean, it's so handy to just be able to have a regular HDMI cord instead of coming out like right now. I have to have this USB-C 15-foot HDMI cord that I take with me everywhere if I ever need to use like one of the venues I play at, I mix videos. And so if I'm doing that, I have to have this cord, or else I have to have a dongle with an HDMI cord instead of just being able to plug right into the system. It's frustrating, but at the same time, it's nice to see them reverting back, which is good.
Yeah, I agree. And to your point about them, at least recognizing the industry and taking that step back, even if it feels like, going backwards.
Yeah.
I think it's critical because they've spent a lot of years sort of blending the pro and the consumer models of everything. Mm-hmm. And I mean, like everybody I know, I mean, even down to like receptionists, and everybody has a MacBook Pro. It's like you didn't need a pro model when we were younger or earlier in Mac's world. The pro was for the professionals. It was higher spec. It was way more computer than most people needed. They were expensive. They were all those things, And then there was the consumer versions, the MacBook Airs or the whatever, and they're still great computer, but great for your average user, right? You didn't need to pay for all the bells and whistles.
Yeah.
And over time, through marketing and everything, it seems like they sort of became one. Like there was a MacBook, but why would you buy that when you could just buy the Pro? There was this whole thing going on. So this revert of attention back to professionals, I think, is really cool.
Yeah, I almost actually pulled the trigger on a Mac Mini just for this coding boot camp, set up with those monitors, so I wouldn't have to use my laptop all the time.
Yeah, and they're great, and especially a new one. You get one with an M1 chip or whatever. I mean, it's a pretty dang good little computer. And
for $800, it's a great computer, and they're tiny, and the use cases for it would be great because when this is done, I could use it for a ceremony rig or like just a second computer as a backup for like this system right here I take with me for mobile recording, and I could literally put the Mac Mini in the back and have a computer built in. So they're pretty incredible. They really are cool. And we had one at the studio for a while that was ancient, but I mean, it did the work, I remember that.
The audio and things like web development, where you're doing mostly text-based coding and stuff. I mean, it doesn't require a massive computer to be able to do that stuff.
Well, even
also, reduces the barrier to entry for people who might want to do that work.
Yeah. Even with my nice, 2-year-old MacBook Pro, sometimes it'll take 40 minutes to render down this podcast video file. It's like it's still slow. So, I mean, who knows? But
it'll be interesting. It'll be fun to see the new M1 chips and everything. So anyway, got a little bit of a tangent there. I like the current events, Mike. I like talking about the current events. That's a good thing.
It is. We haven't done that in a while.
Yeah. So
speaking of current events, what's current with you?
Actually not a whole heck of a lot. So the only thing I probably want to get into, I mean, most everything is kind of just the same, working and all this kind of stuff. But, I've been talking a lot about, career pivots and a lot of that comes from sort of a change in mindset where, I'm not as happy doing the work I used to love doing. I don't want to sit in front of a computer all day. And I think there's a ton going on, right? I don't think it's just a matter of, me not liking the work I'm doing or anything like that. I think that there's like some sort of COVID stuff going on where basically I've been working by myself in my house for 1.5 years now, staring at the wall and Mike on occasion. And that's kind of, the extent of my human interaction. Like I haven't been out networking. I haven't been doing anything. And so I've got some sort of, I guess, like emotional stuff going on that, is hard to articulate or hard to really understand, but there's something going on there where I don't feel quite right. And I find that I'm much more volatile lately in terms of sort of emotional highs and emotional lows. And so I'm trying not to make any rash decisions in this time because I think that I'm in kind of a weird funk where I feel a certain way, but I'll be fine in 6 hours.
Yeah.
But right now I feel like shit or whatever. And so there's sort of this like, I don't want to snap to judgment and hurry up and just flip the whole script thinking that I'm going to change the world today, because I feel like I'm in this weird mode. I've talked to other people who sort of feel like this too. So maybe you can know the feeling even if I can't articulate it very well, but it's sort of I guess I would characterize it as sort of like a low grade depression, right? It's just kind of this, bummer day, bummer, afternoon, bummer evening, but the rest of the day is okay. And that kind of stuff.
Well,
and so I've been doing, oh, go ahead.
Oh, I was gonna say there's just something to be said about human connection.
Yeah.
You know what? Outside of this Zoom call, like actually, hey, there's a person there. I'm going to talk to them. That is, I was kind of going through the same thing. COVID's put us all kind of in this lockdown mentality, and then going out and going to the office or going here or there. It's kind of almost taboo. And now that it's kind of coming back and around, like for this class, I went and joined a co-working center here in Idaho, and just being able to walk in and say hi to the receptionist and say hello to two or three other people working there. And then they do this open mic night on Thursdays. And I sat in on that a little bit, and just having those social interactions it's human nature. We need that in our lives.
It's critical. And I mean, that was one of the things. So I left co-working just barely before COVID. We'd basically hit sort of a downturn financially, and it made sense to stop paying for that. So I had stopped in January, unbeknownst to me that the whole world was going to close in 2 months.
Yeah.
And so I'm yet to sort of return to co-working. And actually I had grand plans of going to a co-working center here. That's actually right in my neighborhood. It's very nearby, but they've just gone out of business apparently. And so that one's gone. And so I thought about returning to my other one, which I really enjoyed. It's a group called Kiln here in Salt Lake, but I think they have a location in like Boulder, Colorado, and Park City and a handful of other places. But they, it's a great center and everything, but it's down in Salt Lake. It's about a 20-minute drive from my house. It's not like terribly far away. I used to do this commute a few days a week, but but I haven't been doing that. And so I'm a little out of practice and everything. So I have grand plans of getting back into the co-working, but it's specifically for what you said, just the social interaction.
Yeah.
Because I'm finding right now about all the interaction I get is at Starbucks or Dutch Brothers in the mornings. Dutch Brothers usually goes pretty good. The Starbucks by my house is the slowest one on the planet. If anybody can figure out how to help the Farmington Starbucks, Jesus, somebody raise their hand. But by the time I'm done in there, I have no patience left for an interaction. Nobody's going to want what I've got to say. So I order ahead, and I still waited 20 minutes today for them to pour coffee into a cup. Like it's just black coffee.
Yeah.
So, but I wanted the interaction. I wanted to go be social.
Well, I mean, isn't it sad that we're kind of like, we're using Starbucks, our $4 or $5 coffee, as an excuse to get out of the house and have social interaction, when really all you're doing is saying thanks. But the whole purpose was to stand in line around people.
Yeah. Well, instead, I'm standing in line with a bunch of pissed off people who've been standing there for 20 minutes waiting for it. And so it wasn't maybe the most pleasant experience of all time, but still, I think it's very important. And we've had a number of conversations about relationships and how important that is. And obviously it's something that I've championed before, in my work here, and also at Teammate Apart, my remote work thing. And that's always been a big deal. And I created this model for virtual communication that basically equates each different type of digital communication to, water in a glass, right? So if we're drinking water for satiation, an email might be a drop of water, or, let's start even smaller. Maybe a text message is like a drop of water, and an email is, I don't know, a quarter cup, and a Zoom call or something might be, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90% of a human reaction or a human interaction, but it's not quite there. Like it's close, and like seeing you this way is great. It's better than nothing. But when you dropped in a week or so ago to bring that fog machine by, like just being able to sit and BS with you about whatever was like 100% better than doing this.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, if you think about it, like you're filling a glass of water. I mean, even if you're on Zoom calls all day, you're still only 90% satiated, right? You're just not getting enough. And I think it requires real human interaction. And, maybe one day when we have whatever it is, IntelliLink or whatever the hell it is that Elon's making, where we have
the VR,
chips in our heads, and we can communicate without speaking and all that. Like maybe things will change. But as far as I can tell, at least for the near term, there's just still nothing that's quite as good as human interaction.
Yeah. And I mean, like for you, at least you have, family and kids. For me, it's like, I don't even have that.
Yeah.
I mean, I have parents I can go and see, but having your kids play football and having, their social activities that kind of allows you to get out and interact with other people. But like, if I don't stay on top of it, I'll be a hermit and not say hi to anyone, for a long time. Cause I like, I'm good at that. I'm good at not saying hi and not really socializing or anything like that.
Well, and it's a habit, right? You have to be into the habit of sort of saying hi and putting yourself out there and all that stuff. I mean, even though it seems like it should be very common, you definitely have to work for it. I mean, it's not just a free, and I don't just mean you, but I mean, for everybody, I think, you've got to, you've got to put yourself out there to some extent. And I think it is easier for most people to sort of recoil. And you make a good point that, especially during COVID and everything. I mean, yes, I had my family around, and, eventually, or at some point, I was like, okay, you guys can go, but, go back to school.
Out of here.
But for people who have nobody else, or who have, I mean, at least in your case, you had some family and stuff like that. But for people who have literally nobody, I imagine this time has been really difficult. And, and I think not only about those people, but also about like our friends in foreign countries and stuff like that, where their apartments are as big as a postage stamp.
Yeah.
I mean, I have a reasonably sized house. I have a nice big yard. I mean, so even at the worst of COVID, if I'm locked in my house, I've got Netflix, I've got, a quarter-acre backyard to go screw around in. I can go tan, I can go barbecue, I can go do all these things, right? Where like, the girls that work for me in Spain, they live in their teeny little flats and their whole life is built outside, so when you can't go outside, they literally have nothing. And they have no room. They can't move around. They can't, and so, I mean, I know that this time has been really challenging. So I'm definitely coming from like a privileged place, but at the end of the day, I can still sort of say that it's definitely had an effect on my mood in sort of a negative way.
Oh yeah. I think COVID's had effect on everyone. And I think it's getting to the point where, we're it's not behind us per se, but it is, it's like, we're actually starting to get back and, like, going into a co-working center isn't like taboo, like, like, oh my goodness, people in real life, like,
well, and it's certainly easier in some parts of the country than others. I mean, obviously they're having more problems in some places than others. Here in Salt Lake, it's, relatively, I mean, I guess, quote unquote, as safe to move around as it's probably going to be. Yeah. And so, so that's good. I mean, I'm vaccinated anyway. My family is, everybody is. And so, I mean, it's, at this point, we've more or less tried to resume what has some appearance of a normal life.
Well, you kind of have to, because if you don't, I mean, like, if I just said, hey, you know what, I can't do gigs because of COVID, like, I don't eat. Yeah. And so it's like we're at a point where savings are gone. The, whatever subsidy checks or whatever that were coming out, those are long gone. They're not coming out again. Yeah. And it's to a point where you either shit or get off the pot. You literally, you have to do something to feed yourself, and, going to work, whether it's, working in a bar, driving truck, DJing, whatever. It's like, you're going to take the risk of getting COVID. And I mean, I'm at a point right now, both my parents got it, and they were both vaccinated. My dad, it was kind of like a hit or miss kind of little period with him, even though he had the vaccine, but he kind of pulled through. And my worries are kind of like, like they've had it. So they're the reasons that I was kind of, being very, very safe and cautious to begin with. And they both got it now. So like, there's no reason for me to sit back and use COVID as an excuse not to go out and work.
Well, and I think it's just like, I mean, for good or for bad, I think that, like a lot of people do, I mean, for one man's loss is another person's opportunity, right? So like in your example of DJing, if you say, hey, I don't feel comfortable going into the club yet, I can't take that work because of COVID. While that's your right to do that, that then becomes an opportunity for somebody whose tolerance is a little lower, and maybe they're willing to go work. And so unfortunately, I mean, it sucks to have to make this, I guess, kind of Sophie's choice, my health or safety, or my health or safety as I perceive it versus money. Right. I mean, it sucks to have to make that choice. And, but I think the reality for a lot of people is that, right. It's I go back to work and just run the risk of getting sick, or, we're going to lose our house or whatever. Right. And so, I mean, it sucks that is what it is, but I think unfortunately that's the road a lot of people are finding themselves on.
Well, it just is what it is. You can't just be a hermit and not do anything, Well,
and that's the thing. I think I told the story before on the show, but my wife's grandmother is like 96 years old. and she's, feisty as hell. COVID couldn't kill her. Like, I mean, there's just no
get COVID.
No, I don't think she ever did get it, but I mean, just, she wasn't going to let it stop her though. She didn't stop going out. She didn't stop playing bridge on Mondays. She didn't stop any of that stuff. Her and all her old grandma buddies,
I guess when you're 96, it doesn't really matter.
Well, and that was sort of her perspective, right? She's like, I've been here for a long haul. Like something happens to me, like it's just time.
I could fall down the stairs and call it good tomorrow.
Yeah, she's like, literally everything can kill me right now. So anything. So anyway, so she had a very, I guess, sort of open attitude about COVID really from the beginning. But the example she used was, I guess, at some point in her early life, there was a polio epidemic in the part of the country she lived in. And basically what happened is your family would quarantine. You'd hang a white sheet or something off of your banister out front so that people knew that your family was sick. And the rest of the world just kept on living, and I think that there was maybe, something to be learned from that. Obviously we have technologies, we have vaccines, we have, different therapeutics and things that are coming out now. So there's, I mean, a lot more safety and a lot more options than they would have had back in whenever this was, the 30s, 40s, whatever. Yeah. But I did think that there was something to that idea that rather than shutting down a whole society, ruining people's jobs, livelihoods, careers, businesses, whatever, this idea where, you sustain, you take care of yourself. And I think that, I love community aspect. And I think that it's important that we look out for those who can't look out for themselves or who do need us to, be vaccinated so that they can be more safe or whatever. But I also think that there needs to be a little bit of that. And I think for people who are immunocompromised anyway, they've always done that. I mean, if you can't eat peanuts, you're careful with everything you eat, I mean, like, you sort of would adapt. Right. And so I think as it pertains to, infectious disease or this sort of thing, if you have the flu, stay home from work today, don't bring the flu in for everybody. Or, if you've got a cold, maybe don't go to lunch with us and sneeze on everybody.
No, the problem is the one guy that, not even the one guy, the thousands and millions of people that have it and just don't care and then go and see grandma and give her a hug.
Well, and then the other thing too is sort of that sleeper thing where you've got 2 or 3 days or something where you don't have any symptoms. Yeah. So you're out horsing around and you don't realize that you're, making people sick. And I think that's where some of the vaccines and other things can step in.
Yeah, no, it is what it is. COVID's been weird, and coming out of it's going to be interesting to see what long-term effects it has and what, how things change because of it.
Well, and so to sort of bring this conversation full circle, I mean, you taking this step into this web development realm, like have used this really inarticulate saying a million times, but this idea that it's taken every step I've ever taken to get to where I am today, so that I don't feel guilt about all the dumb shit I did as a kid. I just assumed that it was part of the journey.
Right.
But in your case too, I mean, it's this, right? I mean, it took COVID for you to maybe get pushed to the point where it made sense for you to do this thing. And, maybe you've got there anyway. I don't know. But, if all steps were part of this journey, then, I think you've arrived at a really awesome place. And so I'm excited to see how this thing goes. And hopefully you come out the other side ready to build me a website.
Yeah, no, I hope I come out the other side with a nice career. So it would be nice to have stability for a change. I tell you, one thing as a entrepreneur and self-employed person, I've been doing DJing since 96, and there's been periods where I've made a lot of money, and there's been periods where I've been freaking out, wondering how I'm going to make my next car payment. And the difference is, being self-employed, you never know when your next check's going to come from who, or the client, like, are they going to pay me in time? Am I going to get this when I need it? Versus, I don't know. There's something to be said about having a stable, every other week I get a paycheck. Yeah. And
I mean, for gig workers like you and me and, anybody who really works just project to project or whatever, which, is a significant amount of people. I mean, that's definitely a serious thing. Like we talked about earlier, benefits and 401ks and things like that. I mean, a lot of times those are the things that fall off the bottom of the list, and you don't care about it or worry about it until you're older. And by then it can be too late. So I think it's really important to do that. And so I love the steps you're taking, and I'm excited to follow you along the way.
Yeah. So if we're kind of, quiet or don't have a new episode in the next, 12 weeks, that's why. And I apologize in advance. And thank you for bearing with us. And we appreciate everything, your listens and sharing with your friends. And Do we have a Patreon? Can we say, hey, go to our Patreon and give me money so I can have a coffee?
No,
tomorrow?
we don't have a Patreon yet. So, but you can contribute to the show if you want to. If you go to eggscast.com, there's a little donate button. It's just a simple PayPal donation. If you wanted to contribute to the show financially, you're welcome to do it that way. We're also working really hard to build community and just kind of spread the good word. I mean, we've been at this for more than 220 episodes now. I think this will be like 229 or 230.
We haven't, we've never really pushed monetization. We've always just kind of just done it to do it.
Yeah.
And I think it's getting to the point where you might be hearing us say, hey, go to our Patreon, subscribe.
Yeah, no, it's true. Well, and part of that too is it's not so much about, just making scratch. At the other end of it is getting our message out there to people who need to hear it. Yeah. Like I think it's important that people in sort of mine and Mike's age group hear these messages of being able to pivot and change your life. Like there's no reason to be unhappy. Just change your job, change your career, do whatever you want to do. Like, I think that those messages of encouragement, both from us and then from like numerous guests, right? I mean, we talk to just the most incredible people week to week. And I think that there's just so much knowledge packed into our 200 some episodes that, it's unfair that more people aren't seeing it. And so I think it's really important that we push the community, and for people who listen to the show every week. And, obviously, I mean, we do this for you guys, but, do what you can to spread the good word, to visit us on YouTube, leave some comments. We run a video version of this show for people who are just audio listeners. There's a video version of this show every week on YouTube. There's also, lots of little clips and miscellaneous other things that have been cut out of shows, to try and provide great information to people, and just sort of try to help get this incredible wealth of knowledge that this show has generated out to the people who need it. And so, more than anything, like Mike's saying, I mean, it might be Patreon, it might be whatever we talk about, but at the end of the day, it's really about getting this, our message and the message of those who come on this show into more ears.
Yeah, we're definitely not doing it for the money. So
if that's what we were doing, we'd have bailed some time ago. Yeah. So, and now with all of Mike's newfound web money, he'll finance the whole thing.
I don't know about that. I gotta get that dub first. So, but it has been a really fun kind of like, I mean, like if you've been listening since the beginning, we've gone through a lot. We've personally pivoted 2 or 3 times, and all our guests, I mean, like some of the people we get, like, I can't believe we're talking to them. It's like, how the hell did we get Rob Swift? How the hell did we get DJ Kubert? How the hell did we get Todd Henry? Yeah. These people that we're interviewing, they're legends in their industry, and it's really cool to be able to approach someone and have them say yes, and be able to extract that knowledge out of their brain, which is just that right there is worth doing the show. And then hearing people emailing us asking us questions about our guests, that is just so cool. It's just really neat.
Yeah, the whole thing's great. And I think that's ultimately what our sort of push forward will be is, how can we drive as much community interaction as possible? How can we get the message out to as many people as possible? I mean, at this point, we've had nearly 200 guests, most of them CEOs or entrepreneurs or startup founders, or, all the things that we have been over this period of time, and a lot of our listeners are. And I mean, there's such a wealth of knowledge here that it's totally worth getting into. And it really is a disservice that more people aren't hearing it. Yeah. So do what you can.
By wealth of knowledge, he means our guest knowledge. We're not.
Yeah, I don't know if me and Mike have gotten any better, but but if you show up for the guests.
Every now and then we ask an okay question.
You know what though, Mike, if you even take us, even in a moment of humility and sitting and making fun of ourselves, if you go back and you listen to early episodes of the show, the first 10 especially, but beyond 10, 20, 30, 40, even up to maybe 100, this show's come a long way. And, it really has. The quality of guests have continued to improve, even though we had some really great ones early on, the Gina Grads of the world and stuff. Yeah. I guess if we were going to ask any favor, at least until we can ask you to empty your wallet into a box, until then, we, support the show through subscribing to us on YouTube, sharing the good word on podcast platforms, leaving reviews, just good ones. Don't tell anybody that stuff. Yeah. And just kind of spread the word around that way. Share our video content on YouTube, especially share the podcast with your family and friends, and make sure that the message, of any of our guests gets to whoever needs it when they need it, because I think we've covered some really critical stuff.
Yep. So I guess
without that,
yeah, I think that's a good
wrap.
Yeah.
Cool. All right. Well, I promise I'm working on a new outro, but for now, thanks to everybody who listened to the show this week and every week, and we'll see y'all next time.